Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and with me today, the Welsh, the Joe Orrico, and we're going to talk about projections. Projections are sometimes the fruits of the devil, sometimes are the pathway to success, and today our discussion is going to be about some of the projections. Right now, we're using the ATC projections, which is a nice one because it kind of collects all the data from all the other projections and lops them into a little pile for us to look at. And we're going to talk about some of these projections that seem pretty bullish, whether or not we agree or disagree with them. And that is a good time. So if you like a good time, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast feed. And of course, you can always leave your comments below. We appreciate everybody watching the last couple of videos. Remember, we got the Ultimate Guide series out too. So if you're just getting up to speed again with fantasy baseball, we just had an incredible group of guests the last couple of weeks, especially in the pitching side. Suarez and Nick Pollock joined us to talk pitchers last week. We've gone through all the positions. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on the podcast feed. It's all there for you. And of course, remember, when you drop your comments below, you could win something very special. In fact, we've got a winner right now. The winner of our Fantasy Baseball Championship belt giveaway, Chris Voss and Woody. We got two winners. So congratulations, Chris Voss. That's V-A-S. And Woody, I only assume, is the Toy Story fellow there. So it's nice that something finally went his way. He's had a rough 20 years. Gets cast aside. He almost gets blown up. Gets given away, almost dies in an incinerator. So it's nice to see Woody getting something nice like a fantasy championship belt. And you get in touch with us, Woody and Chris Voss, at mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address, screenshot your YouTube account, and we'll confirm that and we'll get it sent out to you. Again, Chris Voss and Woody, congratulations, you're the big winner. And of course, when one giveaway goes away, another takes its place. And we've got the big, amazing fantasy baseball trophy courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy sports hardware. This is your shot to win it. Again, subscribe to the channel, drop your comments below. And the stunning black trophy featuring high quality metal columns. Those are the best kind of metal columns too, the high quality ones. 19-year perpetual base. That's longer than Joe Orrico's been watching baseball, I feel like. And of course, we want you to win this. So subscribe to the channel, ring the bell till it goes ding, drop your comments below. That's it. That's all you got to do. Gentlemen, let's talk baseball now that we got all that stuff out of the way, although I do like giving away free stuff. Welsh, projections are something like, for me, when I do the Black Book series every year on Amazon, by the way, just updated for March, go check it out. I use projections in the relative position value along with last year's stats and then 3-year averages when applicable. I find that gives me a nice base of what to look forward to. I know with some players, you don't get all that data, right? You have players who are rookies, player who are second-year guys. You don't get to use all that. So how heavily do projections weigh for you when you are making your rankings up and doing all your business, getting ready for fantasy?
Yeah, projections are pretty divisive for a lot of people, especially in the fantasy baseball world. And by the way, I want to give a shout out. Something I didn't mention. This is the first year Fantasy Pros finished as the #1 projections. We rank projection systems and then we rank rankers and we put it out there. And shout out to Ariel, who has been up there. Shout out to Cardi, who's been up there. But this is the first year Fantasy Pros had the #1 projection. So, that's a huge, big positive. But it's a very divisive thing because there are people, my cohort, Scott Bogman, pays attention to it, not the biggest projection. Scott White, our friend from CBS, has kind of talked about kind of being, again, I don't want to paint people as anti-projections when they're not, but there's not as attuned to them. And then obviously you've got fantasy baseball people that are locked in making their own. I use projections as a great baseline to tell me the story, the path of a player, because projections, you said something interesting. You're like, you use projections and 3-year averages. Well, a lot of projections are 3-year averages. That's kind of the baseline of it. It's like they'll be weighted differently. You now have a lot of different things like the BatX and Cardi is using like StatCast data. They're using ballpark information. They're using a lot of other pieces to the formula that we're using to analyze players to be a part of that. So projections have gotten so much bigger. But, I think the highs and lows of what a player can be, projections tell a really great story. So I think it's a very beneficial thing. You should kind of know where you're at in that realm. Now, do I use it in I've got to put out the auction calculator based on the projections to tell me the dollars and I do it 1 for 1? No, like Ariel does that. Like Ariel's very much like, well, this is what it is and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not like that. I like to have the baseline I like to go through my process, and I use it as a tool in my tool belt. That's, I think, what I've always said. I think there's a lot of different things you can do, but it is simply a tool in my tool belt outside of being the only tool in my hand, if that makes sense.
Well, whatever holds your pants up on the show, that's what I support. Orrico, Welsh made a good point, which is, the amount of StatCast data and stuff that we've had here, it's really evolved over the last 5 to 10 years. I used to be somebody that wasn't anti-projection, but I was kind of like, let me see the projections. I'm a big eye test guy. I played a lot of baseball. I coached a lot of baseball in my life. So to me, a lot of it is just what I see sometimes. But I do believe that because StatCast data and some of the advanced metrics that MLB's really put forth these last 5 years does actually make certain projection systems more intriguing to me than in the past. Typically in the past, it always felt like, well, they just kind of give you an amalgamation of what happened the year before. And well, I can look at last year's stats. That's pretty easy. But do you feel the same way? Like there has been a little advance in terms of maybe not the accuracy, but maybe just a little bit more of the intrigue because of the fact that some of these incredible technological advancements that we've had in MLB have kind of opened us up a little bit more to the concept of these projections actually being a little bit more useful to us in fantasy.
Yeah, the projections, I like projections. Now, I think it does depend on which particular player you're talking about and which system you're talking about, because they can vary a lot. If you're talking about, the guys who've been in the league for 6 or 7 years and they're superstar type of players, I don't know the projections are going to do so much for me, right? You kind of know what to expect from those guys. Every now and then you can be led on to, oh, he had a drop in barrel rate or something like that last year, and maybe the power is going to go down a little bit. For those guys who are the 5 to 10 year veterans, you generally know what to expect. Projections are kind of tricky when it comes to the young players, the guys who don't have much of a sample size in the majors or even the minor leagues. If you look at the Roman Anthony projections, the Connor Griffin projections, they tend to be a little bit more conservative because there's less of a sample size. So I think you use the projections, but something that was said on a podcast a few weeks ago, I forget which podcast or where it was, but projections are never going to give you the breakout players. They're always going to shoot for more of the 50th percentile number. So you have to do your own evaluations. The projections really help, and Welsh put it well when he said it's a tool in his tool belt. You use them, but I would never go into a draft with just the list of auction values and say, this is my rankings list. You got to do your own evaluations. You got to infer a little bit if it's about playing time, if there are off-field issues that might come into play. A guy missed half of last season. Brenton Doyle had a lot of personal troubles last year. Are those accounted in the projections? Maybe, maybe not. And then you have the various different systems that do different things. Steamer wants to be the first to market, and they're usually pretty good, especially for pitchers, but they come out very early. The Bat X incorporates the StatCast data, and now we have the Bat X for pitchers. So there's a lot that you can do with the projections. ATC gives you that well-rounded average pretty much of every other system. So I think it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for a list of players to draft, I wouldn't go about it that way necessarily, but they can pinpoint certain outliers that you might miss when you're doing your own evaluations.
All right, so we've got 10 players we're going to talk about today. We've got 5 pitchers, 5 hitters. We're going to start with the hitters, and we're going to start with Gunnar Henderson, a guy who last year did not live up to his expectations or his projections, just for the record. Came off a fantastic 2024 season, 37 homers, 92 RBI, stole 21 bases, hit 281. And last year, a bit of a down year. Now, granted, Orioles lineup around him certainly had issues, injuries, all kinds of things, but that home run total dropped by 20. Went from 37 to 17, and it's not like he missed significant time. He played 5 less games year over year. So obviously, this is one where you look at the projections right now, and they're telling you, hey, he's going to hit 26 home runs, which is kind of interesting because it's splitting the difference. He's going to steal 24 bases, 83 RBI over 152 games and score 96 runs. So the runs and the RBI, okay, like that's fine. That feels good. Stolen bases are probably close, but it's the home run total too, which I think is really interesting. So Orrico, I'll start with you on this one here, because Gunnar Henderson, obviously last year, disappointment in terms of the power. And rather than going and projecting him all the way back at 37, they are projecting him well over 20, despite the fact last year's total was low. Are you buying these projections where it seems like they're just saying, yeah, he's going to bounce back, maybe not all the way quite to where he was 2 years ago, but certainly circumstantially better than last year in 2025?
Yeah, the thing with Gunnar Henderson, and there's so many reports and there's so much news all the time, it's easy to forget that Gunnar Henderson last year, around this time, was dealing with a shoulder strain. It was an intercostal problem that cost him the first week of the season. He went from a first-round pick to a second-round pick in a lot of rooms. And to his credit, he actually stayed on the field for the majority of the season, still 154 games. But I've read a couple things that suggest he was playing through that injury for the majority of last season, which would explain to me the power dipping down to 17 homers. You still have decent hard hit data when you look below the surface. A 49% hard hit rate is still very good. 8.5% barrel rate. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible, especially if he's playing through an injury. Exit velocities are still really good. And the ballpark is excellent. If you look at Oriole Park, if you isolate just for 2025, it was the third most friendly park for left-handed hitters, and it was the second most friendly park for left-handed power. So I think a healthy Gunnar Henderson, still so young. We forget how young the guy is, 24 years old still, in probably the best lineup he's ever been in. Gunnar Henderson could very easily be a 30-30 guy, 100 runs, 100 ribbies, hitting somewhere in the 270 range. I think that he is very justified at the end of the first, beginning of the second round. I like the projections for him for sure.
Welsh, what do you think of these ATC projections for Gunnar Henderson? Do you think even though they're good and they seem to be very positive, do you think that it's not accounting enough for the injury last year, zapping him of that power?
Well, I mean, how you said that, I think like it's not accounting because it's done. The shoulder's over. Sorry, trying to mince my words on what it is, but like, I don't think it needs to account for that injury that was last year. So what it's accounting for is the skill set that's back. And, he's there's a little tricky because I think there's an argument to say, you take out the injury, because I think the injury did kind of play a role. One way you can also see that is year over year in his first 2 years, tremendous bat speed with Gunnar Henderson. He raised, his bat speed, and then that thing came down a little bit into the third year. So I think that's something you could start to look at like, oh, maybe, he had to backtrack the bat speed or whatever. But one of the reasons I think you could make the argument that the projections might be a little too Pollyanna and that there might be some question marks is he definitely doesn't have like an elite barrel, elite launch angle, or elite ability to pull the ball. So those would be things where I would say like, all right, maybe if I'm trying to make a case for it, maybe the shoulder issue wasn't something that was carrying so long. Maybe it was that like he had a decrease by almost 3 percentile points of barrel percentage into single digits. And that's really not great. Like you want like your big trustworthy power hitters to be guys that are into like the 11s, the 12s, which he was the year prior. On top of that, he doesn't make up for some of those things with a big launch angle. He has 2 straight years of an under 10-degree launch angle, and he did not pull the ball. So those are reasons why I would say, like, I could actually see this being into the 21s. He's like a doubles master. I think it's the Bat X actually has him for 1 less homer. But then on the opposite end, I would just say, like, I buy it because he has done it. He has done it 2 straight years. He had 37 and 28. I just went away from it 28 and 37 over the past 2 years. He does hit the ball crazy hard. 92 average exit velocity. Hard hit numbers are great. The one thing that projections don't do a great job of is progression, like great progression, because like projections are always looking and building off of what we have had and what have they told us. It's not accounting for if Gunnar Henderson were to start pulling the ball a whole bunch more, or he were to, increase his launch angle. Like one of those 2 things with his skill set, incredible bat speed, is going to create big numbers. So I'm just kind of talking through this because this is the first guy here. And he's also super interesting because it's a superstar. He had an injury. We know he can be a 30-30 guy. But there are some elements in his game that I think could bring this lower. But I'm going to buy this because I think he is like appropriately priced as a target that I want to get this year, because he is perpetually one of those guys that is 1 or 2 little tweaks away from literally being in the discussion with Bobby Witt. Like if he just pulled the ball or got the ball in the air a little bit more, we're talking about like, should Gunnar be in the same discussion as Bobby Witt? And you're getting him in the second round. So I think projections are doing a really good job here.
And more lineup protection with Pete Alonso is really interesting too. To me, that's the factor that I would like to bring into the conversation, because I don't think either of you guys really touched on that. It is funny too. You go back and look at the 2024 Baseball Savant page. It is scorching red everywhere. Everything's in the 90th percentile for the most part, except the barrel percentage. Like that's the only thing year over year that's not. And then you go to 25 and it goes from 76 to 46, right? The barrel percentage. So is one of those things that is very interesting.
Finding anomaly like that's something that I do. And maybe it's going to end up being just something I'm wrong about in the future. But like when you look at a guy and you're just like, oh, look, here's 4 years and 1 year is off. Like I do think you can kind of push that aside. You can give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove you wrong. And he's got that. That's the exact point right there. Is it's like, you've got 3 years under Gunnar. 2 of them have been like this elite first round talent level. This year, some things tailed off. So I think that's adequate enough to be like, oh, you know what? That shoulder probably did account for some of these problems. And I'm willing to go back. And that's what this is like a puristic projections look. This is a 3-year player. It is taking 3-year averages. It is weighting the most recent year, but it's not taking over. And the long-term thing shows us like this is like a 30 home run guy.
All right, next guy we're going to talk about is Zach Neto, who's a player a couple years ago. I think Welsh was really the highest of people that I had talked about. And certainly last year was a breakout season. He's 25 years old. Last year, 26 homers, just 62 RBI, but again, lineup placement. 82 runs scored, 26 steals, hit 255. This year, the projections are giving you basically all that and a little bit more. So he is projected for 27 homers. We're looking at 86 runs scored here. We are looking also here for Neto at 75 RBI, 27 steals. So it looks like a really strong back-to-back season here for Zach Neto. Welsh, my question to you, looking at this Angels lineup, do you think this lineup supports another copy-paste season basically for Zach Neto as he continues to establish himself as one of the upper-tier guys, maybe not elite, but certainly one of the upper-tier players, the top 50 guys in MLB fantasy?
Yeah, I think like you're maybe alluding to like it's just not strong support, like the anti-Gunnar Henderson thing where we're like, hey, look, there's Pete Alonso and there's like a lot better support around that. This is a team that doesn't. I really just don't think that has to do with Zach Neto. I mean, Zach Neto has never been a guy that has had a bunch of RBIs. You know, I mean, he had 62 last year, 77 the last year. The only projection that's like really high on him right now is Zips. So we can just throw that out the window. Everybody else is like, he's going to repeat that. He doesn't score tons and tons of runs. Again, that's all supportive. Like what the offense has been, it's still projecting the same thing. So then if you're going to come back and say, well, you know, does his homers and stolen bases, like those are not really relative to the rest of the team. I actually think the thing that you have to look at more is the games played. That's the projection. And that's something projections really struggle with. I know Orrico agreed with me on that. Yeah. Is that like they're projecting him at like almost 150 games and he's only done that once in his career. So that's something that it's like, you know, he's had a lot of nagging injuries that have been floating around. That's taken, you know, the talent away. But from a talent perspective, this is the argument that we just said with Gunnar. We're like, man, if Gunnar were to change this or that, he could be like a top 3 overall player. He had growth. Zach Neto had growth. His barrel percentage went from 8% to 14%. That's elite. His launch angle, 12 degrees to 17 degrees. That's like elite. Pulled air percentage, 21 to 24. Pulled air percentage might be one of the most important stats to pay attention to for like continued growth on guys that maybe don't feel like giant power hitters. But his hard hit rate went up. His strikeouts didn't become a massive problem. Like Zach Neto has all the tools to continuously be a 25 plus homer guy. He steals at a pretty high clip. I think there's no reason to think that Zach Neto will not be a 25-25 guy unless he doesn't play a bunch more games. So the projection to stare at here is a very Pollyanna look of 148 games for a player that has only done that once in 3 years. So that's the thing that I stare at. Everything else, like, this is who Zach Neto is. He's 250, 25, 25, 80, and 70. And like, that's pretty solid space.
Orrico, what are your thoughts on Neto here? Because if you dig a little deeper for like all the good points Welsh made, there is some swing and miss in his game. So does that hinder him potentially hitting some of these projections that seem pretty strong?
I like Zach Neto, I think, more than the average person. I think you mentioned top 50. Like, I see Zach Neto more as closer to like a top 25 guy personally. Considering he missed the first 30-odd games of last year and still gave you a full season's worth of stats, I think that he can be a 35 guy if he stays healthy. And, you know, looking at his career, like 2023, he played half the season in the majors, but he played another half the season in the minors. I believe that was like his partial call-up season in 2023. I think he did deal with some injury as well, but he didn't get called up, I think, initially because he was still so young and he'd just been drafted. I think I could be misremembering that. And then the shoulder injury last year, from what I understand, it's healed. So at 25 years old, I'd be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for health. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, 82 runs in a horrible lineup in 128 games. It makes you think if he does reach that 148 games that ATC's calling for, like Welsh mentioned, the games play projections can be kind of wonky. But if he gets to that 148 games, he should be close to 100 runs. I think he's a 30 guy pretty easily if he plays that amount of games. So I don't really worry about the lineup. I don't really worry about much with Neto other than the potential for maybe that shoulder injury comes back, because I think a lot of the time we assume that injuries are healed when a guy is able to play a few months, and sometimes they're able to just play through a few months hurt and then they end up hurting themselves more and end up missing time the next season. So I like Neto. I think that where he is priced, he is worth that injury risk. But something that's kind of interesting to me, if I look at the last 2 weeks of NFBC drafts, his ADP is exactly the same as Francisco Lindor. They're both going to pick 27 overall. It's a tough choice. It is a tough choice. I don't know where I'd go there. I think it would probably be a toss-up depending on my draft.
One thing I just wanted to add in that I think is important to say, because I don't think I made this clear with myself. I don't pay attention to games played projections or innings pitch projections. I just want that to be clear. I'm making cases for some of these. It is the thing I care about the least is what any projection has to tell me on the games they're going to play or the innings pitch. The innings pitch is how I was able to take advantage of Garrett Crochet in the betting market, Joe, when we did our shows, and both shows, when we did the Garrett Crochet stuff, because he was like the highest Ks across the board, but they projected his innings low, and it's like, nope. So the argument, I'm not trying to make the argument like, oh, Neto's is big injury prone and this, and look at the games played. It's just like, no, that is a standout piece, but I don't pay attention because it's like fresh slate at this point. Like, guy had an injury last year, he's clear now. I think that's the approach to do. So I don't care nor pay attention to any of projected games played or innings pitched.
Well, games played had a lot to do with Jeremy Pena's season last year, which is unfortunate because we missed a chunk of it. He only played 125, but he was on pace to just crush all of his career highs across the board. He had 304, first time ever over 300 last year. He stole 20 bases. That tied his career high. 17 homers. That was the second highest in his career again, but less games played. And then 62 RBI, 68 runs scored. If you look at the projections here for Jeremy Pena, you're looking at an 1882 season with 69 RBI in there. Nice. And then you're looking at somewhere around 19 stolen bases here, according to ATC. So this is a basically, Orrico, it's telling us, hey, what Jeremy Pena did last year is right and it's correct. But to Welsh's point about the games, right? Well, we're projecting more games. I feel like we should even project maybe a little bit more stats, considering what Jeremy Pena was doing before the injury, unfortunately, kind of derailed things for a little while. So I think these are good projections for him. They're fair projections. I almost feel like they're still a little light. Do you agree or disagree?
I think that they're pretty all right. I think that there is some risk in terms of the power because, the last couple seasons, 4% barrel rate, 5% barrel rate, 35, 38% hard hit rates. He did jump up to 8% and 42% respectively. But that's why, like we mentioned on the show a few weeks ago, you look at those 3-year averages. And you also got to factor in that Jeremy Pena was hurt a couple times last year. And the Astros don't have a foggy clue of what to do with their injured players. They have shown that over the last couple years. So I don't really trust them in terms of evaluating what to do.
It's like when you go to the nurse's office and you broke your arm and she's like, just here, put an ice pack on it or blow your nose. Yeah, there you go.
Put some tussin on.
It sounds stupid to say in a way, like they're professionals, they're professional doctors, whatever. They bungled Tucker, they bungled Alvarez. Last year, they misdiagnosed Pena's injury. So when are we going to figure it out, right? So I think Pena is a really good baseball player. I think he's maybe a little bit better real life player than fantasy player. He feels like a guy who needs to accumulate a little bit. In 125 games last year, he was amazing, but it was also in a career year. He takes a step back, and he's not that 135 WRC plus. Let's say he's around the league average bat he had been the first couple of years. Then he really does need to accumulate a la Geraldo Perdomo to give you those stats that you're hoping for, unless he's able to build on those barrel and hard hit rates. And it's definitely a possibility, but at 28 years old, I think we kind of know what he is. I think that you can probably split the difference between what he did last year rate-wise and what he did in the previous couple of years and say he's going to be like a 270 hitter. He gives you best case scenario a 2020 bat with decent counting stats. I wouldn't say he's a massive target, but I think he's a decent fallback. Like there are so many good shortstops that I would prefer to target, but if I miss out on some of the elite names and I'm taking Jeremy Pena as the 10th or 12th name off the board, I think I'm fine to fall back on that.
Last year on our shows, Pena was a guy that we liked a lot, Welsh, because of his ADP. We thought he was a good return on investment, and he was great. We looked like geniuses there. What's your take on this situation here with Pena? Because it does feel like, although these projections are solid and moving forward here, that maybe they're underselling him a little bit, or you or Joe Orrico is where you think, no, this is fair considering his platform so far, because Joe said it, he's reaching his age 28 season. This is where players are supposed to reach that next level if they have another gear in them.
Yeah, I kind of don't agree with the they're 28, so we know who they are. I mean, this is the prime. Right,
28
I don't
to 31
agree with that
is when
statement
you really,
at
if
all.
you're gonna pop, you pop, right?
Yeah,
like,
no, I understand that conceptually, you're growing to that space. But like Joe Adell is like he's serviceable now, I suppose. But what this comes back to, not making it a whole thing, is like what I said earlier. The one thing I don't think projections do a great job of is projecting growth. I think it projects what we've had, and the best case scenario for that, I suppose, could be like Cardi with using like StatCast data and stuff like that. So I don't think it's uncommon for it to look and see like, okay, you had a mediocre year. Hey, he took this big step. We weighed it, but we're going to repeat. But my counter to this is like, I think this is underselling. I think this is underselling Jeremy Pena. So instead of, dolling this up is like, oh, it's like pretty good, but what? No, I just think this is wrong. Like, I think Jeremy Pena had a phenomenal year, and it is built around consistent growth. 3 straight years, yes, minimal numbers, his barrel percentage has gone up. 3 straight years, his hard hit rate has gone up. His strikeout rate has gone down in that time. He has gotten the ball in the air more 3 straight years. And guess what? Hold air percentage has gone up 3 straight years to an elite-ish level of 21%. So my point to this is like, sure, I think there's some elements of like his game that you could look over a couple years and maybe, 28, and we say we kind of know, but like he has shown growth year over year. And last year was the start of the breakout that was then cut short. I see a guy that if he continues this trend is going to be close to 10% barrel, could be close to 45% hard hit rate. If he gets the ball in the air, he's already pulling it more. He doesn't strike out. He gets on base. And what's beautiful? 97th percentile sprint speed. One of the fastest guys in the league. You can still steal. He hits both righties and lefties well. He just stopped stealing a little bit in the second half because he got hurt. I think this is a fair space to look at a guy who has a really great bat to ball skills, who doesn't strike out, who showed the ability to hit and steal at higher levels, to be like, hey, this is underselling him and he could be a 25-25 guy. Orrico, would you really be surprised? Now, we can agree that maybe he doesn't get there, whatever, but would you be surprised if he was a 25-25 guy next year?
No, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but I think my general point was like by the time you get to age 28, I think by and large we know who a player is. Sometimes things change, but I think what we've seen over Pena's 4 years in the big leagues, we're talking almost 2,500 plate appearances. I think we have a general baseline that's been established. Can he continue to improve? Can he continue to improve? Yeah, he can. I think the 17% strikeout rate, though, I wouldn't call it fictional because it's been that way for the last 2 years, but his swinging strike rates are like 13.5%, 14%. He chases a lot. So I could see a world where the strikeout rate pushes up, but I do agree with you. Like the upside for Pena, hell, he could be a 30-30 guy. It's possible.
Yeah.
But I think when you're looking at the overall picture, he would need to change a lot. He would need to continue to boost the barrel and hard hit rates. He would need to raise the ball a lot more, like 48% ground ball rate. It's kind of hard to boost over 20 home runs. It's possible. But I think there needs to be a couple of slight tweaks, raising the ball a little bit more, maybe a little bit more patient in terms of chasing outside of the zone. He makes good contact, but his chase rates are 35%. It's a little bit higher than I'd like to see. But there is definitely a world of upside with Pena. I would just say the likeliest outcome feels like what ATC or really any, because all the systems here, they're pretty much copy-paste 18 and 18, 18 and 19, 18 and 17. That's what I'd be expecting. And if you're like drafting with software, if you have draft software open while you are making your picks, put him down for 18 and 18. And then if Pena ends up going 25 and 25, then you're living life.
And again, I think when you're looking at Jeremy Pena and you're looking at projections, you should focus on the baseline. The baseline is what you want to pay attention to, but is it perceivable? Back to the 28-year-old thing. I agree with everything that you said, Joe, and I'm not trying to argue he's going to be a 30-30 guy, but my point is this is a guy that has 3 straight years of continued growth, and he is borderlining on this space when you're about to grow into your critical years, the 28, 29, 30, those big years. You're about to step in, like, can you continue to grow? And I think he can. I think it's easy to perceive that he can based on a myriad of things that we just talked about. But that's also why the projections are here. You should be happy with like a 2020. If you can live with the cost based on that, then I think you can live in like a really happy spot. And that's what you have to come to terms with using projections in putting these together. But I think they're underselling a player that has had 3 straight years of growth. And I think he's like just a phenomenal get right now in fantasy.
All right, we're going to talk about a player who was drafted as a top 25 guy last year, but did not finish as one, that's for sure. But before we do, don't forget, if you're looking a place to play your leagues this year, why not try Fantrax if you haven't already? They have the ultimate customization. You can tailor rosters, scoring, playoffs, constellations, and more, all to your liking. You can do multi-team trades, elevating your strategies with trades involving more than two teams, which is super fun. And of course, you can use the extensive list of scoring categories there. You want to make your own adventure. You want to create your own fantasy in your fantasy league. You could do it over on Fantrax. So bring your fantasy baseball league to Fantrax or create a new one for an unbeatable user experience. Sign up today at fantrax.com/fantasypros. That's fantrax.com/fantasypros. Okay, next guy here is Jackson Merrill. I teased it, and last year, obviously, not the best year for Jackson Merrill in terms of expectations. In rookie year, 24 homers, 16 steals. Last year, 16 homers, 1 stolen base. He played just 115 games compared to 156. The batting average dropped 30 points. And obviously, injuries played a big role for Jackson Merrill last year. Also, sophomore year, so you can count the league adjusting to him and him not adjusting back. Here's the thing. You look at the projections for him. They're very strong. 22 homers, 8 stolen bases, maybe a little light there, 81 RBI. 77 runs scored. Well, she's going to be hitting in between Tatis and Manny Machado. If you can't rebound there, then I got to really question, your abilities. And year over year, that Baseball Savant page does look very different, as does the fact he hit 60 points lower in his career against left-handed pitching, and his OPS against left-handed pitching is 647 compared to 871 against right-handed pitching. So with all those numbers, are you buying the projected numbers for Jackson Merrill in 2026?
I think the projections are solid median line here. I guess this is a tough one because I don't think these projections tell us this incredible story. You know what I'm saying? He played 115 games, hit 16 homers. I don't think they're presenting him as this wildly awesome player. If anything, I think you could probably look at these projections as maybe a disappointment because you see pretty low run and RBI numbers into the 8. Bat X has him under 80 runs and RBI. ATC has got him under 80 on the runs. I think if you stare at the homers, sure, I think he could be a 20 home run guy, but I think they're telling a solid story. And I think it's that he's a bit of an underwhelming player. He does struggle against lefties. He's been consistent as far as how he's gone in the batting average front, but he stopped stealing bases. The base stealing went away. I don't know if he 100% knows the type of hitter that, he wants to be. He was always a solid contact guy, but that kind of depleted this past year. So we just might not have the story enough. This is why you need those 3-year windows. He hit an expected batting average of 300 2 years ago. It was 263. So is it going to be 280 this year? If he's a higher end hitter, I think he scores a bunch more runs and RBIs. I don't know if I buy the home runs, if I'm being honest with you. He does get the ball in the air, but he doesn't really pull it that well. So I feel like he is still trying to develop into who he is. But I think these projections are telling us a decent baseline story, if not maybe being a little bit more aggressive on the runs, but I think they're underplaying everything else. So I'm not sure if I 100% answered your question here, but I think Jackson Merrill is immensely difficult to deal with this year. I kind of don't know what to do with him in fantasy, which is why I'm avoiding.
Joe, this is the poster boy, I think, for where projections can get you in trouble. Last year, the projections were off the chart for Merrill because he had a great rookie season. He was brilliant, rookie of the year quality, all of that stuff, right? But even within that, if you look deeper, even in 2024, just that standalone season, his slash against left-handed pitching, which is a good sample size, 85 games, 240 batting average, 276 OBP, 370 slugging, 646 OPS. So the red flags were there, yet last year the projections for him were incredibly bullish. This year they're more in line, which is good considering last year was a huge disappointment. So what do you make of the Jackson Merrill projections being, it's seemingly a big bounce back for him in 2026? Are you buying it?
I am, yeah. I am throwing away last season, and I'm throwing away all of it, Joe. And I'm looking at what he did in his rookie season and then pretty much calling it an injury washout last year. Because if you go month by month, this poor guy couldn't go a whole month without dealing with something. It was a hamstring in April. He got sick in May. He had a concussion in June, another illness in July and August. He hurt his ankle at the end of the season. It's this guy just kept dealing with so many different things. And yet still, if you look below the surface, the barrel rate actually improved, went up to 13%. Hard hit rate was about the same. It went down 1 point, but no drastic change there. The exit velocities were kind of whatever, 89.7, 110 max EV. They're fine. But really, I'm thinking that Merrill just was never able to get going last year. He dealt with so much stuff. He did end up missing about 50 games. And I think that we're going to see a much closer version to 2024 Merrill than 2025. I think the steals come back, personally. If you're looking at a healthy Merrill over a whole season, he has still, even last year while dealing with all the injuries, 80th percentile sprint speed. I think he just was worried, being so young, about adding another potential injury if he tries to steal a base and twists an ankle and has another ailment after dealing with so many things. I think it was more out of an abundance of caution. I trust the power. I trust the lineup. I think that the steals, I don't know if we're getting 16 necessarily, but I think double-digit stolen bases are going to come, and I think that he's a good batting average asset. This feels a lot like Bo Bichette last year without as much of a track record to build on. The guy who was going as like a second-round pick, because Jackson Merrill last year was like a third-round pick at worst. Injury washout season, we're getting a 50-pick discount. I'm taking that all day.
Yeah, I can understand the 50 pick, especially in shallower leagues. They take the chance. I'm always more willing, and we talked about this on our last show too. Shallower leagues, you can have more risk because the replacement value is easier. Deeper leagues, that risk can kill you sometimes. All right, last part we're going to talk about on the hitting side before we switch gears to pitchers is one of the toughest things when it comes to projections, right? It's players who have never played a day in the big leagues, but have played professional baseball. So Munetaka Murakami of the Chicago White Sox, obviously from a power standpoint, pretty darn good. If you go look at his Japanese league numbers here, you're looking at a 270 hitter, a high on base percentage, 394, a 550 career slugging there. So a lot to like. Now, what does that translate in terms of Major League Baseball? Well, they're projecting him ATC for 133 games, 27 homers, 68 runs scored, 73 RBI, 8 stolen bases. Now, Orrico, it's not a great lineup with the White Sox. We know that. It's gotten a little bit better with some of the guys like Kyle Teo, coming of age, and some other pieces, going through here. But Murakami obviously is one of these guys where projections is all we really have to go on him. Do you agree with these strong projections for Murakami in 2026 being something you would invest in?
I generally kind of agree with the numbers, but it's not going to be something that I'm investing in at all this year. I've seen him get pushed up a lot. And, I did a draft with Tim McLeod recently, who does focus a lot on the Japanese leagues, and he bumped him up like 50 picks, which does make me, a little bit interested, at least because Tim really covers the NPB a lot. Yes. But at the same time, 34% projected strikeout rate, 32, 34, 37 from the Bat X. Like, that's a crazy number. He's going to hit 200 or somewhere in that vicinity. At least that's what I expect. If you look at his contact rates in Japan last year, we're talking about 63% contact rate. That would be the worst mark in all of Major League Baseball last year. 17.3% swinging strike rate would also have been the worst mark in all of Major League Baseball last year. So you have to project he's going to get a little bit worse, facing a higher level of competition. If contact rate goes down to 60% with a 20% swinging strike rate, he might fail to hit for the Mendoza line. Now, it might come with 30 homers and 10 steals, but if I'm getting a sub 200 batting average, we're looking at the second coming of O'Neal Cruz here pretty much. And that's just not something I really want to be investing in, especially in not a great lineup. If he was playing for the Dodgers or something like that, and I could bank on 100 runs and ribbies, I'd be a lot more interested. But in this lineup, it's a lot more likely to be 62 runs and 68 ribbies with a 200 batting average. I can't do it in year one.
I tend to agree with you, Orrico. Welsh, where are you at? I feel like the White Sox kind of hold some of these projections back potentially for him.
So this is one of those like soft spots for me. Whenever I can like talk to a player and they tell me something that they're adamantly about, like I hold it in. And I talked with Anthony Kay, who pitched against Murakami a bunch in Japan. This is when Murakami was in camp, and I asked him and I said, what do you think about Murakami? And he goes, he's hitting 30 homers in the majors. No question. I said, there's these projections that are out there that are like 30 homers with a 200 average. I'm like, how does that work? And he's like, it doesn't. He's hitting 30 homers. And then I go, what do you think about the Murakami can't hit high velocity pitches up high? And he's like, dude, I have pitched against him and like whatever he said, 30 something at bats. Like I have seen him for years, not just here. And he's like, he is going to hit and he's going to hit successfully here. Now that's his teammate. Like we got to take that for a grain of salt, but he's also seen some really good success. He banged around Jordan Hicks when he was out here, high velocity guys. He's kind of taken apart a lot of the pitchers out here. Do I think Murakami is going to have a high batting average? Absolutely not. But I do think Murakami is going to absolutely crush out here. And I think he's going to hit homers, but I think it's close. It is actually closer. One of the few times I am kind of with like the zips and stuff where it's like, give me 230 And I do think he is going to hit 25 to 30 homers. So I do buy some of that. So how much do you want to invest in him? I invest in him. I don't know. If you're not into the lower batting average, I understand it, but that is like close to 30 homers. I think you can get pretty late in a draft. So I buy a lot of this stuff because I have seen him twice in camp, because I talked to some players about him. We saw some good success, in some of the spring training. Like, I think there's a lot of things that are telling us a decent story. Should he be going inside the top 100 or something? No, of course not. But he's going so late that I think he is worth a risk here. And you've got people that are closer to it, to McLeod, whatnot, that are bumping him up. I'm much more interested in Murakami ever since I talked with Anthony K about him. So I think the projections are on something, but I also don't think the projections know what to do. That's the other thing. It's like, how does a 204 batting average, a 206 batting average work with 31 homers? Well, that's the Bat X projection. Obviously, we kind of know how that works, but that seems silly. So something's going to give. I don't think any projection is correct right now. It's just, what direction is it going to go? Is he going to be worthless, or is he going to be, 240 hitter with 35 homers? I'm leaning in the positive mind frame for Murakami.
All right, we're going to move ahead to the pitchers. Before we do, shout out to our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Today's show is brought to you by Hard Rock Bet. And if you haven't already tried, make sure you download the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app and give it a whirl. There's still time for you to get 150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet. If it hits, you get your winnings and 150 in bonus bets only at Hard Rock Bet. So download the app today and make your first deposit. Let's start with Hunter Greene of the Cincinnati Reds. Projections are strong for him. 167 innings, 201 strikeouts, just 54 walks, and a 3.66 ERA. Welsh, look, this is not hard to project here, considering how good he was last season. Obviously, 132 strikeouts and 107 innings, only made 19 starts. So this is just a matter of, you were talking about projecting games. Well, here we go. We're projecting more starts for Hunter Greene, which has not been the Hunter Greene MO. And look at the season he's having. Is this year's Garrett Crochet?
So I kind of think the projections are wrong in this space because of the higher ERA. To your point, exactly to your point. Like, if he, the K percentage went up 31% year over year. And if they're projecting, what is this, 100 and, the Bat is projecting 168 innings. This would be one of those guys you could take a look at. But the thing that I'm getting at is, like, most of these are 3.5 or higher ERAs. Most of these, I don't think, are accounting for like that full big season. And he's had 2 straight years of having a 2.7 or 2.75 or 2.76 ERA with an expected ERA that is 3.05 or 3.06. My point is like, the expected ERA is within a quarter of a run, and those are a half of a run better than the actual projections that are out there. He's made some significant moves. He's walking less. He's striking out more. Don't love that he gave up more barrels, but the split finger, I think, has just become like this dominant thing. If I can answer the question of, are the projections on or off here? I think they're off on Hunter Greene. I kind of don't want to trust Hunter Greene, if I'm being blatantly honest with you, but how do we not? Like, the splitter has made him more of an efficient pitcher, and he's legitimately, to what you said, he's a guy that could lead the league in strikeouts if he were to get 200 innings. Like, he's going to be up in that top echelon spot, but the projections don't tell that because it's 168 projected innings.
Which would still be, Orrico, a pretty big bounce for Hunter Greene, considering some of his other annual totals. So are you buying more innings from him, and just being as simple as that? Obviously, last year, the productivity was incredible. It was just, we need a little bit more quantity along with the quality.
Yeah, I really don't understand how they even get these numbers. Like, he's never thrown more than 150 innings, and every single system's calling for more than 150 innings. I really don't get that aspect of it. Like Welsh said earlier, you can kind of throw away the innings pitched and the plate appearances and kind of do them yourself. If you rely on projections for the rate stats and then do playing time yourself, you're going to have a lot more success than just blindly following the systems. At least I think so.
I agree.
With Hunter Greene, there's a tough eval here because in spite of his success the last couple of years, he still pitches in Cincinnati. And a couple of years ago, that was like a red line, the same way that Coors was. The guy pitches in Cincy, we can't take him. Now, obviously, Hunter Greene is much more talented than a lot of those pitchers we're talking about. But still, last year, he allowed almost a 10% barrel rate, 45% hard hit rate, 1.25 homer 9 in that ballpark. That could lead to trouble. Now, the command seems a lot better than it used to be, only a 6% walk rate. But again, going back to that whole 3-year thing, if Hunter Greene reverts to a 9% walk rate next year with those home run troubles, then we could easily see a mid-threes ERA. I think that's definitely a possibility. I think that where he's going in drafts, it makes sense because the whole tier of arms in this range, there's a lot of risk with all of them. Chris Sale, Hunter Greene, Cole Reagans, DeGrom, Max Fried, they're all risky. They're all risky names for different reasons, whether it's health or performance, innings pitched worries. But I think that Hunter Greene is probably worth the risk as an SP2. And I know that he's being drafted more so in the SP1 range. I would more want to take him if I've already taken a Skubal or a Skeens or a Crochet or a Chris Sanchez, and then I can back him up and kind of benefit from him without needing to rely on him for 175 innings. And then if he does throw 130 innings as the SP2, then I'm fine with it because even in 107 innings last year, I think he was the 27th or 28th overall pitcher. I just don't want to rely on him to be that anchor ace that I need a ton of volume out of.
All right, so good discussion there. I want to talk about two players who have projections very close to each other, but the ADPs are not. Kyle Bradish, right now projected to be an 8-win pitcher with a 3.61 ERA, 134 innings, 42 walks, 144 strikeouts. That's pretty solid. Look, he's working his way back from injury last year. He did pitch at the end of the year. Everybody likes Kyle Bradish. No worries there. Drew Rasmussen, another guy that a lot of the pitching gurus that we've had discussions with also like. 10 wins, a 3.62 ERA, almost identical. A couple more starts, 5 more starts, so 153 innings, but 140 strikeouts, 39 walks. Here's the interesting thing. Right now on FantasyPros.com, you can see the rankings if you go check it out. Drew Rasmussen is the 166th player off the board. Kyle Bradish is the 80th off the board. So that is a massive gap when you're looking at these projections being right on there. So Joe, maybe this is a dumb question, but is Rasmussen by far the better investment of the two considering the cost?
I think that he is, and I really like Bradish, but I think people are probably getting a little bit ahead of themselves, again, with the innings pitch projections. 2024, he threw 39 innings. Last year, 32. Expecting him to throw 160, 170 innings doesn't seem quite right to me. Now, he has one season of 168 innings in 2023. I don't think the Orioles are going to play this one carelessly. I think they're probably going to slow play him a little bit, similarly to what we've seen with Trey Savage this year. The Blue Jays are taking it easy with him. They're not going to rush him. Maybe it is 25, 26 starts for Bradish, and they'll probably be very good starts, but they're not going to be to the level that we saw the last 2 seasons when he was pitching. We're talking about like 37% strikeout rates. Nobody has a 37% strikeout rate. It's not realistic to expect that. He's probably going to be in the mid-20s, giving you good whip. Like, I trust him when he's out there. It's just a matter of how many innings I'm going to get. Now, similar concerns with Rasmussen. He's not a guy who's throwing you 200 innings, but at least he's out there. 150 innings last year, 23 and 24, he did deal with some injuries, but 2022 was 146 innings. The thing with him, he's always good. Drew Rasmussen, every single year of his career as a starting pitcher, the ERA is under 3 and the whip is under 1.1. There are more concerns that I have with Bradish, especially considering the price. He's like 70, 80 picks more expensive. If you like buying into that profile, I agree with you, Joe. Just take Rasmussen later.
Welsh, where are you at with this? Because clearly the projections are strong for both, but the ADP is nowhere near each other.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion. I mean, Rico and I kind of had this online where Joe didn't like a player that I liked and was like, why not take this other player later, which I think is always an interesting argument. The only thing I kind of come back to sometimes is I kind of think I don't love that argument because it's like, then take both. Like, just looking at players and being like, well, this guy is not worth this because there's a guy that could be 90 to 95% later. I think that's kind of a crazy argument. You could just not like the guy for the cost, but to be like, well, you can't take him because this guy's, but take all the guys that are better. So the same thing I would say here, like, I think you could take Bradish and you could take Rasmussen. Now, if in this specific situation, unlike the one we were having, I think I would take Rasmussen because I think there's better K upside with Bradish, but I think there's a lot of volatility in Bradish's game right now with the injury concerns. I don't think they have the depth, by the way. They're not the Dodgers where they have this depth rotation where they could just be like, hey, Kyle, just chill out for a little bit. You know, like they're trading away. They got rid of like Grayson Rodriguez. Like there's just not I don't think there's immense depth for them to do that, but they're probably still going to do it. So I think there's some bigger questions to make this argument, but I always think it's an interesting argument because to me, when you do the like, well, this guy is 50 spots lower, it diminishes the player to be like, well, they're just garbage. And it's like, well, no, Bradish is still probably, I think he's a little bit overpriced, but like, I think within the realm of possibility because of the K upside, he's still is worth that range. But from a drafting style perspective, I'm probably avoiding his volatility and the pretty aggressive projections based off of like 2 very years, small sample sizes for a guy like Drew Rasmussen, who I think, as wasn't it Pollock that was on with us was like, it's one of the best fastballs in baseball.
He loves Rasmussen.
Yeah. I mean, he's just like super consistent. He low walk, like he does everything really great. But I just wanted to mention the whole like versus thing. Sometimes those arguments, I think, diminish the player that is the higher cost when it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can have both guys and like be pretty comfortable.
A guy in between both of those ADPs is Michael King, who last year had an incomplete a little bit, missed some time, obviously with injury 2 years ago, another one of our favorite things. And then last year, unfortunately, didn't quite pan out. He only threw 73 innings last year. But he did have a 3.44 ERA, 1.20 whip, so it wasn't all bad, but obviously it wasn't healthy. The projections, Welsh, though, when you start to look at them, are suggesting a 3.73 ERA, 154 innings, 161 strikeouts, and 54 walks. Would you buy that version of Michael King this year coming off the injury? Because it looks like the Padres did when they brought him back. So that's the one thing to keep sticking in my head about King and his health. If he was good enough for the Padres to bring him back, it's probably good enough for me to invest, but where are you at?
Yeah, I'm with you. I've kind of talked about him a decent amount of times that like Michael King is one of my guys. He's in a really weird situation though, because like he's been in the major since 2019, but he's really only been a starter for like since mid 2023. You know what I mean? So it's like when you do baseline projections and stuff like that, you had this one really great year and then you had this injury plague season. I tend to, because of that, this is one of those things where it's like, I kind of want to throw out, even though the production really wasn't bad last year in the time that he had, throw out some of the stuff to be like, hey, the injury took away while, because he gave up like a ridiculous barrel percentage, 11%, and his Ks dropped a little bit. But prior to that, it was like almost 28% K percentage, sub 3 walk. He's in a great pitching ballpark. Great shapes on his pitches. Like I think he's in a good spot. There's a phenomenal bullpen behind him, by the way, and Mason Miller to close down games. Defensively, like I'm into even though there's like a weird group of guys with some of these all-stars, like I'm into the group that's out there. They've got one of the best bullpens in baseball in one of the best hitter-friendly or pitcher-friendly environments that I'm a big buyer back in on Michael King with him healthy this year.
Michael King, I think, has a bigger upside than the other two pitchers we just discussed, and the cost is right in between the two of them, Rasmussen and Bradish. So I like Michael King the most. I get it. He has a little bit more potential downside because he was coming off a mostly injured 2025 Joe, but where do you stand on Michael King?
I've actually drafted him a few times this year as my SP4. I like the general range. Now, he's kind of been getting a little bit more expensive. Like I was getting him more in like the 140-ish type of range, just looking at the recent ADP. We're looking at like 125. And, it's not cost prohibitive yet. I think if he got inside of the top 100, then it might be. But I trust him. I was initially skeptical about Michael King following the half season pitching for the Yankees, not even like a third of the season starting for the Yankees. I was kind of skeptical heading into 24. I bought in a little bit last year. But last year was just derailed by the injury, and I think that everything Welsh said still holds true. The park is good. The stuff is good. The bullpen behind him is good, so you could probably expect close to a repeat of those 13 wins from a couple of years ago if he's able to stay healthy for the whole season. At least double-digit wins should be your expectation, and I think those ratios are going to be pretty good. Are the strikeouts going to be all the way back into the high 20s? Maybe not, but even mid-20s. If he's a 25% strikeout rate, mid-3s ERA, 120 whip, I think most people are fine with that as their fourth SP. And that's like a 15-team context. I play a lot of 15-team leagues. That's a 12-team league. He's probably your fifth or sixth starting pitcher, depending on how you build your team.
All right, let's throw a reliever out there, too, to close the show. Griffin Jax, Tampa Bay Rays, 3.09 ERA projected right now over 65 games, 65 innings, just 18 walks, but 83 strikeouts. Now, they project him for 15 saves because right now it's a situation that's in flux. But Edwin Uceta has had a cranky shoulder. He already took an injection in that shoulder, and we haven't even crossed barely the first week of March. So, to me, Joe, this is an interesting projection because you're looking at Jax being this flamethrowing kind of guy. If he should get the job early because Uceta's not quite ready and he's just dominant, I don't see any reason to go away from him. And to me, this is the kind of league-winning scenario where you get a guy like you got Chapman last year for free. If you can get Griffin Jax on the cheap, That is a huge win potentially if he ends up with 30 saves instead of 15, which again, I understand why they're not projecting that. But if we want to look ahead to what's actually going on in reality in terms of the guys that he's competing with, health is a big deal right now in that Tampa bullpen.
Yeah, I initially wanted to be in, and I was doing an auction the night that you said I got hurt and didn't realize and could have had a cheap Griffin Jax and didn't take him because I wasn't staying up on the news. So read those blurb feeds, everybody. Make sure you're staying up on the news. But I'd missed out on that. But the what we've seen over the last couple of weeks now since is that Griffin Jax's price has gone up. I wouldn't say exponentially, but you were getting him like in the mid 200s a lot of the time. And I'm seeing the highest he's gone as of late is pick 93. That was a February 22nd draft. 93 for a guy who might not even have the job, who pitches for a team that won't necessarily declare a closer. Like Cash, sometimes he will, sometimes he won't. Fairbanks they've had for the last few years, but Fairbanks wasn't even guaranteed every save while he was there. So paying the rising price on Jax doesn't seem right with me, especially because USETA, the most recent report I saw on USETA was that his shoulder feels pretty good after a cortisone injection. He's not sure about opening day. And this time of year, if you have a shoulder arm injury, things are probably not going to go well. But who the hell knows? We can't predict injuries very well. Maybe he's fine. Maybe Kevin Cash wants to mix in both of them. If Jax was cheaper, then I'd still be all in here because the skill set is phenomenal. I think the skill set for both of them is phenomenal. But what I'm kind of thinking about doing is taking a couple Edwin Ucheta shares because he's going to pick 350 recently. Jax is like 120 on average, 130. I might just buy the cheaper guy because these bullpens, there's a lot of them in the league that are just so frustrating. And I'm kind of on the Joey P wavelength of just take the cheaper guy and hope that it works out.
That's fair. I would also say this. The leagues that you're drafting in, the NFBC stuff and some of these expert leagues, very different. Welsh, I think in the casual leagues, Griffin Jax, because he pitches for the Rays and because it's a bullpen by committee, and a lot of people just, even people who love fantasy baseball, bullpen's that one thing. It just kind of falls by the wayside a little bit for a lot of people. I still think he's going to be a value in most casual drafts. And at the projections here, I think the upside is phenomenal if you can get him there.
This is like one of those things though, that it's like, it can't, you want to look at the skill sets. It can't fully predict, like, is he going to get the saves? Is he not? I like 100% understand why the projections are just 1 foot in, 1 foot out, just because there's a couple guys, but also because this team has gone to committees. I also think if he's really good and this team, it's a very competitive division. If they're not in it, they could look to trade Griffin Jax, and then all of a sudden he's a setup guy somewhere. So I think the skill set is the thing that you're banking on, and you're just hoping you're right. We do this all the time. You're like, hey, look, 35% K percentage. Hopefully he's going to get the opportunities. The other guy's kind of banged up. So I'm with that. I'll tell you, I got a different guy. If I could just throw them at you real quick. You want a guy that I think fits even a better mold of this idea is Robert Suarez. Robert Suarez with the Braves is one of those guys.
How many drafts have we done where I was like, yeah, I'm just going to take Robert Suarez at the end because I think he takes over Iglesias.
Yeah, but that's the point of this is the projections have him at 8 saves on 11 on BAT-X, BAT, and ATC at 11. But what it's not accounting for is when Raisel Iglesias blows up a few games. Robert Suarez also looked amazing. You want to look and focus on a player that isn't getting the love based off of projections. It's Robert Suarez because I think he has a legitimate opportunity to take that job and he could save 30 plus games for the Braves. And I think he's a better option. And I mean, they spent the money on the better option than Raisel Iglesias, but he's one of those guys. I don't know where he is relative to Griffin Jax right now, but in a lot of those big competitive leagues, people are speculating, but you're going to have Jax going ahead of Suarez in those spots because Jax has more perceivable save options right now. Suarez is a guy I would be taking at the back end of every single draft right now because if he were given the gig, go look at his projections. The guy
Suarez is 203, Jax is 225.
Yeah, so right near each other. Suarez has saved 76 games over the last.
Well, Suarez years. Also got a 3-year contract. Iglesias has a 1-year deal right now. So I mean, I'm looking at the long-term investment. Great discussion here from everybody. We love to hear from you on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. You could win the big trophy from Trophy Smack when you do. When you subscribe, we're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers this year. You can help us do it. So subscribe to the channel on YouTube and drop your comments below too, so you can win and let us know who are your favorite projection guys here or somebody we talked about. Do you agree, disagree on Michael King, on Griffin Jax, on any of the hitters, Jackson Merrill we discussed? So again, drop your comments below. Great stuff from the boys as always. And of course, stay with us because we're going to get you ready for all of your fantasy baseball leagues this year. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on for the Welsh and Joe Orrico. I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.